now, might be. Now that opens me up to go on to the second thing that I wanted to talk about, which is actually good news. That I mentioned in another stream, but I wanted to go over it in a little bit more detail because I think I have some analysis to add. So get your pause champs ready and shit like that. So I mentioned, I believe last time, but maybe the time before even, that it is the case that a lot of transgender care bans have been taken to court, and some of them have actually started to be overturned. Judges are finding these bans to be unlawful or unconstitutional or whatever variation of not okay they have like deemed it to be. What bans? Well, I will give you an example. If I can go to the tabs I had open specifically to comment on this. Here we go. Here's one. So one of these bans was from the state of Arkansas. There was a gender-affirming care ban in the state of Arkansas that a judge has ruled to be unconstitutional, a federal judge. From Aaron Reed, a trans journalist, he spelled out 311 facts, a thorough refutation of every point ever made against trans care. And she delves into the ones that she thinks are the most important on her own website, which I actually might do as well, cover some of the brief highlights. Well, maybe NPR. NPR should suffice for this. I'm just going to hang on the first bit of dialogue from them, and I'll go over this while this ominous music is playing. Kind of not fitting, but whatever. A federal judge has permanently blocked the country's first law banning gender-affirming care for minors, signaling a victory for queer advocates. The ruling says the state of Arkansas violated several sections of the U.S. Constitution when it banned all gender-affirming treatments for people under the age of 18. The 80-page ruling says depriving trans minors of treatments like hormone therapy would cause them irreparable harm, and that delaying care until adulthood would force teens to go through changes inconsistent with their gender identity. What is this gender-affirming treatment? It's like hormone therapy. You take, I don't know, like you take a shot of estrogen, or you take some puberty blockers and whatnot. These are pretty reversible treatments, and in fact, they've been in use since I believe the 1980s is when the first studies were done on. Yeah, medication. That's right. And they don't even mention surgery that much in this. I think there's a general consensus that you'd have to wait till at least the medical age of consent to start considering things like surgery. But let's see. The verdict comes after an 8-day trial. Let me try to get to some of the judge's quotes here. Moody's ruling says Act 626 violated 3 parts of the U.S. Constitution: the First Amendment, the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment, and the Due Process Clause of the 5th and 14th Amendments. Where are... God dang it. I hate when news articles are this dense. I'm just going to go to Aaron Reed's site here. Here we go. Banning care causes irreparable harm and increases suicidality. The harms are severe and irreparable, quoted from the ruling. Delaying gender-affirming medical care, when indicated, puts patients at risk of worsening anxiety, depression, hospitalization, and suicidality. Not all adolescents with gender dysphoria will live to age 18 if they are unable to get gender-affirming medical treatment. This is true. It is a form of body horror to go through the puberty of a sex that you don't identify with, or with a gender that you don't want to be. You know, say, for example, if you're growing up as a trans girl, you were assigned male at birth, and you start going through a male puberty, growing features that might be revolting to you to have on your own body. It could be a terrifying prospect. Just to give an example. One of the other major points here is that detransition and regret are rare. Let's see. In Dr. Karasich's clinical experience treating thousands of patients with gender dysphoria over 30 years, none of his patients came to identify with their sex assigned at birth after medically transitioning. The reason for this is, I'm sure it spells it out in the ruling, but I'll give the shorter version, is that because of how sensitive an issue gender transitioning is, consultation on the matter is very, very extensive. So there's a degree of gatekeeping that when people start gender transition and they start going through the more medical layers of it and the less and less reversible parts of it, they are very, very sure that they want to transition. And in fact, the early stages of medical transition are perfectly reversible with hormone blockers and hormone therapy, hormone replacement therapy. All you have to do is stop taking them for your body to gradually or less gradually, depending on the case, I guess, revert to producing the hormones that align more with the sex you were assigned at birth. And the gist of it is that if this care is denied to people, trans youth are going to suffer. They're going to die at disproportionate rates. It's bad all around. And of course, the cherry on top, the witnesses are not credible. Most of the state's expert witnesses, Professor Mark Regnerus, Dr. Stephen Lappert, and Dr. Paul Hruz, were unqualified to offer relevant expert testimony and offered unreliable testimony. Their opinions regarding gender-affirming medical care for adolescents with gender dysphoria are grounded in ideology rather than science, according to this judge. This is just about unequivocally good news, and it actually belies a significant aspect that gives me hope for the United States, where I wouldn't have hope for somewhere like, I don't know, Weimar Germany. This is the comparison most often invoked, and in fact, I've invoked this comparison before, particularly regarding the beliefs of conservatives relative to the beliefs of Nazis in Germany, as the, what's it called? Godwin's Law, as that goes. And the key difference here, I think, is that the judiciary is not as insane as the German judiciary was in the time of the Weimar Republic. There have been a number of cases in Germany at the time that were brought to the courts where people alleged, like, oh, Your Honor, I only committed this hate crime against Jewish people because the Jews are running the world and there's a conspiracy, blah, blah. And the judges essentially agreed with them. There was a large amount of street-level crime and persecution against Jews that was legally enshrined and institutionalized by the courts because they were hostile to the interests of, well, the Jewish community, and they were also broadly hostile to democracy. Now, in the United States, you could potentially make the argument that the court system has a necessary degree of hostility towards the institutions of democracy by nature of its unaccountability. But that's kind of a tenuous relation, and I think a lot of judges are the good kind of institutionalist where they see these liberal democratic institutions and they view their job as upholding those. And furthermore, the majority of judges in the United States are more technocratically driven in the sense that if they have heard of or have read on medical best practice, which is likely the case in any legal case dealing with this stuff, they will go with what the doctors have to say. They'll go with what the real, honest-to-God experts have to say. And if the experts on transgender care and trans medicine say that we shouldn't be restricting care for minors in this way, and these sorts of treatments, HRT, puberty blockers, and whatever, should be available, provided this, consultation is happening, then they're going to rule that way. They're going to say, no, you shouldn't be banning this care outright because this is going to hurt people. We have a lot of research to this effect. And because of the lack of an insanely negative bias on the part of the courts, I think that it's only a matter of time before at least a number of these trans care bans fall pretty flat on their face. Now, there could be some conservative judges that don't go that way, but then that would spur on a case in the Supreme Court, which itself is kind of a worrying prospect given the conservatism of the judges there. But I think that if recent events are of any indication regarding the Supreme Court of the United States, they would probably also rule in favor of best practice medicine for the trans community, just for the concern of their own reputation as a court. They've been losing a lot of legitimacy, especially regarding their ruling on Roe v. Wade and a few other cases, and they can't afford to make a wrong step anymore. The Supreme Court does. So the conservatives have kind of like overplayed their hand and backed themselves into a corner where eventually they are going to lose the culture war. Thank God, because the culture war is going to get people killed if it keeps raging the way that Republicans have sort of wanted it to do. But yeah, trans people stay winning, and I'm super glad that this ruling has happened. And since this is a federal court, it's a pretty high-profile legal precedent for other courts to then follow. I'm sure there will be numerous other suits brought in other states. Danny Poplio, thank you very much for the follow. Glad to have you here. And I think that eventually the court system will, in fact, say trans rights and will be able to put this behind us, hopefully for good. I think we've really earned it at this point. Because, lest we forget, for all of the United States' failings as a set of institutions, this is one of the most progressive countries in terms of the demographic opinions of the population on the planet. You'd be hard-pressed to find a country with more progressive minded people than America, at least in a comprehensive multi-issue sense. So that's my 2 cents on this news story. A rare bit of good news, which is very nice to see when you're surrounded by, like, I don't know, trans people are mutants and demon devils, signed random white politician.